Lost where the forest would grow, the children followed the pointed tail. A very poignant quote from Chapter 4 that begins to paint us a picture of two children, a pointed tail, and a tree. This is image_friend, first appearing in Chapter 2, hidden beneath Queen's Castle, only but for a split second, watching us with his pink and yellow eyes respectively, a color combination that any Deltarune fan will immediately recognize, as these two colors and his friendly smiling face appear hidden throughout many dark and quiet corners of the game. Friend and the role he played in the disappearance of Dess will be the main topic of this video, as today I'm going to solve what happened to December Holiday. All the way back in the year 2022 was the Spamton Sweepstakes, of which contained an ARG that gave us teasers for Chapters 3 and 4. However, also hidden within were tidbits of lore like Noelle Holiday's blog. In part of this blog, Noelle talks about having played a game called Cat Petters, of which she modded the absolute living shit out of, causing the creation of a glitchy egg that she believed was a culmination of different modded cats trying to be registered as occupying this one egg. This game Noelle plays is believed to be based on the real web game Cats, with cat-like pets that were made out of circles due to the tech limitations of the time, which ties into how they are shown to be a cat-like monster in Ralse's outlining of how Dark Worlds work, and why cats are so prominently featured surrounding this character. This detail is important, because later on in Chapter 4, we are able to discover a panel of the prophecy that states, "The tail of hell takes crawl," which depicts a tail made of individual circles, which is believed to be in reference to our friend here. As we can see from the full design of Friend, it is clearly based on the Undertale character Indogony, which is supposed to be an amalgamation of dogs. This in tandem works perfectly with Friend being the product of the corrupted egg from Noelle's Cat Petters game. Though, according to Toby Fox, the information in this ARG, while clearly important, shouldn't be considered directly canon to the actual story of the game. Meaning that while Friend is directly tied to an egg, or multitude of eggs, it goes a bit deeper than it seems. In each chapter, there is an extremely hidden room containing a tree, and what is only described as a forgotten man behind said tree. This forgotten man then goes on to give you an egg before disappearing, meaning there are currently 4 total eggs collectible in the game so far, but we know at least a 5th egg will be available next chapter as well. It is heavily implied within the Chapter 4 egg room that this forgotten man behind a tree is something that Kris has encountered in the real world, as they go to art therapy to attempt to draw it. They began by sketching what they had seen behind the tree. But, as they sketched, the line began to err, as if the pencil had lost its way. So they started again, drawing over the lines they had already made. Many times, they would suddenly halt, or the pencil drifted into a new drawing. So they started over again. Through many repetitions, their movement became faster and smoother. Until, without looking, they had completed a sketch in a single wild line. In the end, as a result of layering the sketches on top of each other, the surface of the canvas was nothing more than a monochrome smear. Next, a tree was painted over it. Painted over everything, leaving nothing but a simple still life. After all, there wasn't anything to look at in the room besides a single tree. Kris got up. It seemed the painting was complete. But their hand, smudged with graphite, was still moving, as if to trace some unseen shape. An egg was picked up from a nearby easel. But they were unable to visualize on the canvas what they saw, merely drawing a tree over top of it to conceal the scribbles. The Bible, within the book of Genesis, contains the story of Adam and Eve, where Adam and Eve were tricked and coerced into eating the forbidden fruit, often depicted as an apple from the tree of knowledge, by a snake, often representing the devil. Deltarune actually has a lot of biblical religious imagery, and we can see that this story may have been the inspiration for what happened to Dess. The character Caddy is shown to have pink and yellow highlights, while also being best friends with a snake character named Jockington, and as Temmie once said, a cat's tail is just a snake in disguise, representing the cat amalgam friend and his pointed tail respectively. Meanwhile, the tree that the Forgotten Man is behind would be the Tree of Knowledge, from which Kris and Dess, in this situation, eat the fruit of. We can see a repeated connection between Kris and apples throughout the game. Like, a shocking amount of connections. For instance, there's the apple-scented shampoo, Susie saying the Kris tea tastes like apple juice, and multiple other references to apples. But most importantly of them is in Chapter 4, where Ralsei feeds Kris an apple. During a normal playthrough, Kris will slowly eat around the apple as Ralsei feeds it to us. An incredibly weird scene. During the weird route, however, it gets even weirder. The music will cut out as Kris devours the apple extremely quickly, even accidentally taking a bite out of the core, lending credence to the idea that Kris in some way may have metaphorically eaten a forbidden fruit, something of which must deeply play into the weird route. It just begs the question of what the forbidden knowledge Kris has obtained is. But to understand, we must look to Deltarune's parallel story, Undertale, for guidance. Undertale also contains a prophecy of the Deltarune, and though it is very different, it can shed light that may be able to help us. It's stated that the prophecy can take on two different meanings. One following the idea that an angel will descend upon the underground and free the monsters by breaking the barrier, while the other is that an angel of death will fall and free everyone by killing everyone, which is something we can see come to fruition in the two major endings of Undertale, the pacifist and genocide runs, respectively. During a pacifist run, Asriel, who has seen the surface, will take upon an angel-like form shaped as the Deltarune, and inevitably destroy the barrier, acting, and even being referred to, as the angel in this outcome. Of which I think he's going to be the angel in Roaring Night and Deltarune as well, but that's a video for another time if it isn't revealed in Chapter 5. Meanwhile, during a genocide run, Kara, the sibling to Asriel, will be who we meet at the end of the game after killing everyone and emptying the underground. As we have literally fallen from the surface, Kara takes on the role of a fallen angel, or as they call themselves, a demon. Now, how exactly does this apply to Deltarune? Well, Kris in Deltarune serves a similar position as Kara does in Undertale, being the sibling to Asriel and adopted child of Toriel and Asgore. While Kris is not shown to be as evil as Kara is depicted, however, we can see these motifs reflected in Kris's characterization throughout the game. Early on, Toriel mentions that Kris used to have a red-horned headband that they would wear to try and fit in with the family, a classic piece of demon iconography that even gets brought back up during the sword route of Chapter 3, where we can see a red band of horns wrapped around a door representative of the game's alternative, more sinister route. Later on in this route, the unnamed entity, seemingly aware of our transgressions, even opines on how during the weird route, Kris can't hide the fact that they enjoyed manipulating Noelle and killing Darkners as well as Birdly, stating that, without play, the knife grows dull. An important piece of dialogue we will be returning to later. However, I don't believe that Kris is necessarily the only demon in our story, as there do seem to be multiple angels. In Chapter 4, during the church scene, Susie mentions how she had heard that when Kris and Caddy were younger, they had attempted to summon a demon, a detail that is even repeated in Chapter 2 as a throwaway line about clicking a pop-up for demon summoning classes, then confirmed by the line from Caddy that Kris and her studied occults together. The repeated mentioning of this event is no doubt important, and I believe us, the player, is why. During Chapter 2, we encounter and battle Spamton, a character who parrots Kris and our relationship with them through the idea of being a puppet on a string. And while most people already know this, I think the connections between Spamton and Kris go even deeper. Based on his dialogue and antennas, we can get an idea of what happened to Spamton. One day, he got contacted by a mysterious figure on the phone who seemed to have offered him a deal that he accepted and led to him becoming famous, becoming a big shot. Spamton's relationship with this figure on the phone seemingly being quite akin to that of Kris's to us. As we can hear from the lyrics in Big Shot, or at least what I think they're saying, as it's kind of hard to make out.
Think it's coming from you to the ball. Hand played till you're all alone. It pulls strings and make it ring until your heart turns red.
Now there is only one character who is heavily tied to fingers, hands, and the phone who this could possibly be. A man who seems to be pulling the strings in the background, a man who is consistently referred to with demonic imagery, a man who cannot be remembered, a name that cannot be said, a snake disguised as a cat offering the forbidden fruit to the poor, poor children. That last line of Big Shot, I believe what it says is,
Until your heart is ripped out.
Until your heart is ripped out. Kris made a deal with the devil, and because of it, lost their freedom, selling their soul to Gaster in exchange for what? I admittedly don't know, but ironically, it could have been freedom. Our soul, being the player, technically gives Kris, and only Kris, the true ability to affect the outcome of the world and the game. Still not convinced? Well, in my previous video, I presented the idea that Deltarune is Undertale backwards, and because of that, Kara and Gaster are parallels of one another. Friend being the humble servant to Gaster, as Flowey is to Kara. But there's one scene I didn't mention in that video. After performing a genocide run and destroying the world, waiting 10 whole minutes in the void, Kara gives us the ability to bring the world back. But the cost of such is that we must give them our soul. The very last thing in Undertale is us selling our soul to Kara. And the very first thing in Deltarune is Kris selling their soul to Gaster, channeling us into Kris in its stead. One of the biggest oddities and unanswered questions was where Kris's soul went before we interjected, and this gives that an answer. This being why Friend has the same file naming scheme as other things associated with Gaster, the reason they stalk us and purport to be our friend, the same of which was done with Spamton. Remember Mike? Well, the Chapter 5 teaser gives us more than enough reason to believe the original Mike was in fact Friend, trying to prevent Spamton from signing Tenna's deal, presumably because it was breaching the contract of Gaster's, which is why he abandoned him afterward. And the cherry on top is Tenna saying,
You can't get it from an egg!
Referring to the Peepus, is talking about Spamton, and what it is he got from an egg. His over-fascination with the Peepus, and why in that hidden scene from Chapter 3, it's signified to be a shameful thing. The egg is representative of something sinister. The egg is representative of a deal with the devil, and what it is that will hatch from the egg. The Peepus are literally coming out of the phone, because eggs are symbolic of friend. This still doesn't answer, though, what happened to Dess. Well, I think the answer can be found in the lyrics of the song Raise Up Your Bat, played during the Lightner's Live section of Chapter 3. The lyrics of this song actually tell us exactly what happened to her. The first line, when the demon heart is crying, confirms the idea that we, the heart-shaped soul, are depicted as and represent a demon, but also begins to paint a picture of what happened on that fateful day. And the blood is gushing bright. Raise up your bat for the burning fight. When your hope is slowly dying, and your future's lost its right, raise up your bat and face the fright. Let's knock 'em dead into the night. With the context that we, the soul, are the demon heart in this scenario, the song paints a starkly apparent picture of what exactly happened to Dess, as this is her POV. Sometime soon after taking control of Kris, we attack Dess, slashing her with Kris's knife, causing her to bleed, while causing Kris to cry in response. Dess attempted to defend herself using her bat, but no matter what Dess does, she cannot survive this fight, as she loses hope and her future facing the fright. The specific nomenclature of a burning fight is even in reference to the track Burning Eyes played during Eram's fight. This track not talking about Eram, but talking about the fire in Kris's eyes as they fight Eram, the character who most taunts us about Kris's past, and being friend would be well aware of this event. The knife, without play, does grow dull. And I know, you might think I'm reaching, and that claiming Kris controlled by us was the one who killed Dess is crazy, but I have yet to present the smoking gun. During the weird route of Chapter 2, right before we fight and subsequently manipulate Noelle into killing Birdly, this track plays. This short song, playing on repeat, is simply named D, just like how in Chapter 1 there is W and in Chapter 4 there is C. But the fascinating part about this track is that it's a piece of the song Raise Up Your Bat, slowed down. With this knowledge, we can infer, based on the fact that C in Chapter 4 is short for Carol, that D in Chapter 2 would be short for none other than Dess. Now, dear viewer, why would a song titled Dess that is part of Raise Up Your Bat be playing moments before we use someone else to bring about the death of Birdly? Because the same thing is exactly what happened to Dess. An event that has traumatized Kris and sent them to art therapy to try and convey their emotions. But given the nature of Gaster, they cannot physically draw nor remember him. Also, hence why the person we speak to specifically states that this is a place where we draw pictures and don't kill each other. Because Kris killed Dess. Kris attempting to wash their hands, unable to get a gray smear off. As if their hands are stained with the blood of Dess, unable to erase what happened. But rather than it being blood, monsters turn to dust. And thus Kris's hands are stained gray. But I don't think Kris washing their hands is just symbolic. I think they literally did it. In the lake. Gaining the status of sheath on the weird route, stating that their breath quickens around swords, showing a fear or paranoia relating to them that we bring out specifically on the weird route. Hell, look at the 4 different items we can get from Jevil and Spamton. 2 characters who hold shadow crystals seemingly given to them by Friend based on Spamton's heavy connections to the cat. The puppet scarf is obviously representative of us puppeteering and taking control over Kris, which Spamton's entire character mirrors. Or alternatively, since Noelle mentions that they seem like guitar strings, they are meant to tie back to Dess. While the deal maker is a pair of pink and yellow glasses, just like Friend's eyes. The Jevil's tail is representative of the tail of hell, being a devil tail, and finally, the devil's knife connects to the knife that Kris uses to kill Dess. The entirety of Chapter 3 having been created by Kris, and thus reflective directly of them, is why Friend is so much more prevalent in this chapter than the others, only being a stalker in the dark in Chapters 2 and 4, while actually talking to us in Chapter 3, just like how the Forgotten Man is only able to talk to us in Chapter 3's egg room. Speaking of that egg room, one of the Ruden there even states that they wound up here after being lost in the couch. To wind up here in the first place, we have to try and go nowhere, of which this Bibliox tells us it's not a good idea to go nowhere with someone else. Once again, being an allegory for Kris and Dess getting lost in the forest, winding up at that infamous tree. Don't forget that in Chapter 4, if we try and imagine what the night looks like, Kris will instead have us imagine Jockington in a tree, in a nest, coddling a bunch of eggs. A snake in a tree with a bunch of eggs. So based on all the current evidence, I think I know what happened. Kris and Dess were lost in the forest when Kris spotted a pointed tail slinking behind a tree. They followed it and encountered Gaster, who offered Kris a deal, the cost of which being their soul. Dess follows shortly behind. But as we take control of Kris, we use the opportunity to attack Dess with our knife. She tries to defend herself, but we are simply stronger. We kill Dess and leave Kris crying and traumatized. Our new friend keeping a close eye on Kris and us to ensure we follow through with whatever Gaster's goal is. Kris, feeling an immense amount of guilt, so much so that they would promise Asriel to try and help bring her back, no matter what.